Greetings and thanks for joining us once again. Today's show is focused on the topic that we shared, Elon Musk's forecast for Q1 of 2023. And I think you'll like the show based on analysis provided based on Elon's information. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show and would like better information on investing and trading, please take time to join us. So, one of the challenges right now is who has more information that can help us determine what earnings will look like and therefore determine, what we should see from the stock price immediately after earnings and going forward. So as I thought about this, what I realized was that, wait a second, we actually have one of the best sort of analysts and stock pickers on our side to determine what the number is going to be. In this case, that's Elon Musk. So why do I say this? Well, let's review the last, let's say, 3 years of earnings announcements for Tesla. Every earnings announcement we've had until the last one that occurred, there was a focus by Elon on the fact that into the foreseeable future, we're guaranteeing a 50% per annum increase in sales/revenue. So that was maintained as an answer from Elon at every meeting for 3.5, 4 years, while at the same time we were seeing above 100% growth in profit and in revenue and profit during that time period. So basically, he maintained that posture through the last 2 or 3 years, and the only time that changed was a month and a half ago after the last earnings announcement. So how did that change and how does that affect what we're going to see today? Well, the big change that happened is that after Elon usually gave us our 50% growth rate number, he would say no more and then move on to other topics that were sort of helpful, but a little bit helpful, but not greatly helpful. So what we noticed was that there was a big change. The big change is that if you looked at the forecast that Elon had, that he gave us, and you could call it 2 million vehicles produced and sold for this year was the target that he put out there. So all we had to do to determine what would happen with the stock, etc., is sort of take 2 million vehicles, average price of $60,000 per vehicle, and that would kind of give you the revenue for the year. And then you could play around with what earnings were going to be, someplace between 25 to 30% profit margins would give you, let's say, a gross sense of what revenue and profit would look like. Well, that, is an easy way to dig into Elon's brain to determine what we were looking forward to. The problem with this that happened is that Elon sort of omitted something. The omission was that he did say we would deliver a certain number of vehicles, but what he did not say was what the profit margin on those vehicles might be going forward. So I want to digress and stop here just for a second before moving forward. And the digression I want to point out is that Elon went from I say nothing about revenue or forecasts, which normal companies do. And he maintained that posture for at least 3 years, if not 5. Elon is very careful about monitoring what he says, what he releases, and so that transition to giving a forecast, I believe, was a major blockbuster. The major blockbuster had to happen because the stock price was getting murdered, and so was his net worth. And there are a lot of activities that he likes to do, like buy other companies with his net worth, which were not working. So we seem to enter a new realm of détente or openness by Elon in terms of kind of what's going on, what to expect. And then everyone could use that as a guide for how to, buy or sell and trade the stock. Well, no, there's a question out there is, why did Elon bother to roll into this détente process? And there's an answer to that, and the answer is that Tesla's on a stair-step process like any other company. What happens is you build a vehicle, the Model S. There are X number of them sold. As sales start to slow on that, you now build the Model 3. Sales start to pick up on that. And then there's the Y. So if you'll note, what you'll notice is if you have a graph, we have these blocks of growth that keep driving the stock price higher as revenue and profit rise. So what's different now? Well, the growth of stock price and revenue process that I just described has hit kind of a little bit of a wall. And that wall is that we're supposed to be getting to scale production on that cybertruck by now. And that would give us another ramp of growth. So Elon could then put out what our growth numbers were going to be based on current production. And when you start adding in things like the cybertruck and perhaps revenue for the semi-truck, those are the sources of Tesla getting into exceeding revenue and profit numbers. The problem we've got into, though, is the Cybertruck is late and the numbers of semis are fairly low, so they're not adding enough revenue to make a difference. Now, a lot of you have run by the fact that, well, what about the increase in energy in the storage business? And that's an excellent point. There is definitely that issue. Well, one way to, so in theory, that should work and everything should be great because of the growth in the mega pack and the home-based charging facilities. Well, the question mark though is like, if you go back and look at the numbers, the Model Y in China is actually the highest selling vehicle anywhere in the Tesla system. That vehicle on average is selling for about $55,000. If not less on average, because you have to take the more expensive vehicles of all types, obviously take the whole number and get an average for what that number is. And our number was in that 55 realm. That new number, based on the reductions in prices, could be sub 49K, like 50-ish. And so if you'll notice for the last several years, we've had a thing going where the average price on the vehicles has been declining. So what's happening is that we're selling, like half the vehicles sold are at the lowest price bracket. And then as the price increases, the percentage of vehicles declines, even though there are sales at all levels. So what we have going on, that's been going on, is that the revenue from the mega packs, et cetera, when you add it to the, let's say the number up until Elon made this change was 55, 56K per vehicle. What's been happening is that once you did a division process, the numbers didn't add up, meaning that what Elon/Tesla was doing was they were taking the revenue from the mega packs and then there's a fill-in. So instead of, in order not to be nutso on my numbers here, I'm trying to maybe explain it a couple of different ways. The issue is this. Take Tesla's revenue in the last quarter of 22. Divide that by 60,000 units, $60,000 per unit, right? What ends up happening is that you're starting to get a feel for how many were sold. So that number would give you the number of sold. But you can basically play with those numbers. Overall, the idea here is that average vehicle price is about 55K, and all the other revenue from non-vehicles represents the gap between 55,000 and this $60,000 per that we're getting to get a good thumbnail on what revenue and profit's going to be for that quarter. We have to do lay a 25 to 30% margin against that revenue number we just described. So I'm getting to this because guess what? There's a way that they've been accounting for the growth in revenue from megapacks, etc. So are there more megapacks that are being sold? Absolutely. The new plant allows that, and they're moving a lot of product. The challenge, though, is those numbers have already been part of the mix. And what we're hoping, everyone's hoping, is the megapack growth in revenue and profit will make up for the drop in price that Elon has put out there on vehicles. Is that the case? We're going to find out today if that's the case. So what I was really getting at in general here is there's a short-term arc on what's happening with Tesla's earnings, which is, I think we know what our revenue number is because you can simply multiply, 60K times the 420,000 vehicles that were sold. And that gives you a ballpark of where we are in revenue. And you could totally argue against what I just said, because you could just say, well, what if they sold more Model S's at high prices or Model X's, et cetera? All that is possible, but it kind of represents the average over the last 2 or 3 years of what's been going on. So why did I make this show about what Elon's forecast was? Well, the reason I did that is that Elon is a smart guy, and he understands how the analysts are valuing the company and its implications for his net worth. So what I believe Elon has done by giving us that revenue number, there's something that analysts can hang their hats on. And what they're doing is basically watching profit and revenue numbers to see if he achieves the digits or the numbers that he indicated that he would get to. He did, as I shared earlier, he didn't tell us what the profit margin would be, and we're going to find that out. And hopefully costs have fallen far enough so that it blunts the impact of the lowering of prices. Now, I believe that where we're headed for Tesla stock price, et cetera, is we're going to bolt on that next block of growth in the form of the Cybertruck, and that's going to give us a nice next step up for the stock price. The problem is it's not here yet. He said there are going to be some samples sold in June, and we'll start somewhat of production into September, October, and then real production begins next year. So we're almost like idling right now on profit and revenue based on whatever these forecasts until we can bolt on those new levels of growth. So I expect what will happen today based on Elon's process is that the numbers that come out for the earnings side of this will be good, not great, just because we've had this price reduction. And the other problem we've run into is that in theory, we should have just totally run out of cars because of this price reduction. There are some headwinds there. There's the Twitter acquisition and 5 or 10,000 units that were lost. And so the bad press there. Obviously there's competition. Obviously there's a little bit of supply chain issues. Obviously there's some produced and not sold issues. So there are some things that could take away 50, 100, 200,000 vehicles sold. So it's my mind then what Elon's forecast on this whole thing is that he's basically saying we're growing well relative to a normal firm, and we have some things that are going to juice our revenue and profit going forward that are on the way but not here yet. So what this tends to lead to is that the short-term traders, hedge funds, will issue some punishment based on the number being slightly below expectations. What I also believe will happen is if we actually have a nice forecast of how Cybertruck starts to roll in June or July, most of the large institutions are targeting sort of future prices on the company based on all the revenue streams. And they're on a 1, 2, 3 year time horizon, so they can afford to sort of bake in numbers related to the arrival of the Cybertruck and help the stock price in that case. So I believe that if we get some positive Cybertruck news, stock price will dip 5 or 10%, maybe a little more. But as the analysts get a chance to bake in new vehicles and the growth of their sales, I think that's when we get an updraft. So I think that net, we end up back in the 200 range, but it might take a couple of weeks to do so for everybody to digest what Elon has to say. So the overall theme of this show is just to note that Elon has a process that he does, and that process includes doing certain things at certain times, like maintaining, a 50% growth target while he's growing at 100% was the case. Now that he doesn't have that happening automatically, he had to start sort of handing out forecasts, because if he didn't, everyone would have to just take worst case scenario and roll that out there, and that was inappropriate. So, I say let's hear it for more disclosure from Elon, what's going on and what to expect. I'm expecting us to be good, not great numbers, as we've described. I did give it a B minus. I kind of chose that because I was really hoping that some early adopters would start getting some Cybertrucks soon, because if they do, it sort of sets up the whole narrative of this thing just, going terrific crazy in the right direction. So, any rate, we definitely look forward to your comments on all of this. Please, again, go back and review as a stockholder, etc., the last 2 or 3 years with Elon, because if the news looks a little rough on coming in, he'll put disclosures in that help support validity of that item. The one other point on this is, remember when the Cybertruck came out, and a lot of people were like, that thing looks terrible, I would never buy it. And then Elon announced that we have 1 million people who've registered with $100 to actually secure their car going forward. And then all of a sudden, the analysts and everybody else was like, oh, this is a great vehicle and I want one too. So at any rate, I very much look forward to your comments on this. For our health tip today, I just want to remind you the 20-minute walk is a big deal, and try to maintain that if you can, because I think you'll be impressed by the overall feeling and body impact of that. The one addition I wanted to make to that is the 20 minutes a day is excellent and should be maintained. But I met with an internal medicine doctor who suggested that every morning when you wake up, to try to do just a 15-minute walk within your home, so the living room to bedroom or wherever it is. The reason for that is that it helps you consume the calories for that day. That way, when you do a workout, that workout will consume some of your stored calories and therefore give you a healthier outcome. So it's something you might want to consider. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Please take time to like and subscribe. Tschüss, au revoir, lehit road, choda hafez. Zdravíte, ni hao ma, konbanwa, namaste, arrivederci. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day and bye for now.